My name is Helen, and I've been a nurse for more years than I care to count. Life's been no walk in the park, especially raising my boy Michael on my own. His father left us when Michael was just a toddler, and since then, it's been the two of us against the world. I worked double shifts, missed holidays, all to make sure Michael had what he needed. He was a smart kid, eager to learn, always burying his nose in books. I scrimped and saved every penny to put him through college. When Michael told me he was marrying Jessica, his colleague, I was over the moon. Finally, my boy was settling down, and with a smart woman, no less. At first, Jessica seemed like a catch, charming, a good talker, and my son looked at her like she hung the moon. The first time I met her, I invited them over for dinner. I cooked Michael's favorite, meatloaf and mashed potatoes. I wanted everything to be perfect. "Mom, this is Jessica," Michael said, a grin plastered across his face as they walked in. "Nice to finally meet you, Mrs. Thompson," Jessica said, her voice smooth, handing me a bottle of wine. "Please, call me Helen. Only my patients call me Mrs. Thompson," I joked, hoping to break the ice. "And thank you for this lovely wine, dear. Let's get comfy, dinner's almost ready." During dinner, the conversation flowed easily at first. Michael talked about his new job, and I could see he was doing well for himself. "So, Jessica, Michael tells me you're in marketing?" I ventured, passing her the mashed potatoes. "Yeah, it's all right. It pays the bills, you know." She shrugged, a bit dismissive, but I didn't think much of it then. "Michael says you've been a nurse forever. That must be exhausting." "Well, it keeps me on my toes," I smiled. "It's hard work, but fulfilling. I like to think I'm making a difference." "Must be tough though, raising a kid alone and dealing with sick people all day," Jessica pressed on, and I noticed a slight edge in her tone that wasn't there before. "You manage, you know? Michael's turned out more than all right, hasn't he?" I shot back, a little sharper than intended. I caught Michael's eye. He gave me a quick, calming look. "Yeah, Mom's the strongest person I know," Michael chimed in, trying to lighten the mood. "She's a superhero in scrubs." As the evening wore on, Jessica's polished facade began to show cracks. Her comments, slightly barbed, left a sour taste in my mouth. But for Michael's sake, I bit my tongue. When they left, Michael hugged me tight, but Jessica offered only a polite smile and a cool goodbye. "Thanks for dinner, Helen. We'll have to have you over next time," she said, her smile not quite reaching her eyes. I nodded, watching them leave. "Anytime, dear. You're family now." That night, I lay in bed, replaying the dinner. Maybe I was reading too much into things, but something about Jessica's demeanor bothered me. I told myself it was just jitters, new relationships can be tense, and maybe she was just nervous. I remember the day Michael told me they were expecting. He'd actually come over, which was a surprise. When he sat me down, his eyes were practically dancing. "Mom, we have some news," Michael said, grinning like a kid who's pulled one over on his old man. "What kind of news?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. Deep down, I hoped it was what I thought. Jessica, who'd been quiet up to that point, finally chimed in. "I'm pregnant, Helen. You're going to be a grandma." The words hit me like a sweet breeze on a stifling hot day. "Oh, my word. That's wonderful news." I couldn't help but get up and hug them both, even Jessica, who seemed a bit stiff in my arms. "We wanted to tell you first," Michael added, which made my heart swell even more. From that day, I was on a mission. I'd stop by the baby stores after my shifts at the hospital, picking up little booties, soft blankets, anything that caught my eye. One evening, I found a beautiful little crib, oak, with a perfect, glossy finish. I bought it on the spot. The next time I visited Michael and Jessica, I brought a whole trunk full of baby things. When I rang the doorbell, it was Michael who answered. He helped me carry everything inside. "Mom, this is a lot," Michael said, eyebrows raised as we unloaded. Jessica walked into the hallway, her hands on her hips. Helen, we haven't even cleared out the second room yet. Well, no time like the present to start, I said, pushing past her to the living room with a box full of clothes. And look at this crib I found. Jessica didn't seem as thrilled. We want to pick out some of our own things, Helen. You know, make it personal. Of course, dear, I replied, trying to hide my hurt. Just got a little carried away, that's all. As the months ticked by, I noticed Jessica growing colder, more distant. My visits became more about dropping off stuff and less about spending any real time together. Despite the growing tension, I couldn't contain my excitement about the baby. I threw myself into work to distract myself from the nagging feeling that I was being pushed out. One late shift at the hospital, I was sitting in the break room, my phone buzzing. It was Michael. Hey, Mom, he said, and I could hear the smile in his voice. What's up, honey? I asked, bracing myself for anything. It's a boy, Mom. You're gonna have a grandson. A grandson. My heart leaped. A boy, I repeated, letting the reality sink in. Oh, Michael, that's wonderful. We thought you'd like to know right away, he said. Jessica's doing fine. We just got out of the ultrasound. Thank her for me, will you? For taking good care of our little guy, I said, my voice thick with emotion. Hanging up, I sat there for a long moment, my heart full. A grandson. My boy was having a boy. Whatever else was going on, that was something to hold on to, something pure and good. And I was determined to be a part of his life, no matter what. Alex was born on a stormy Tuesday. I rushed over to the hospital as soon as Michael called. He sounded exhausted but over the moon. Mom, he's here. Jessica did great. I'm on my way. I practically shouted into the phone. I couldn't remember the last time I felt so many things at once. I found Jessica in the hospital room, looking tired but radiant. Michael was by her side, hovering like a protective hen. There was a quiet, tender moment when I first laid eyes on Alex. He was so tiny, so perfect. Can I hold him? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Jessica nodded slightly, and Michael handed Alex to me with a cautious smile. Holding my grandson for the first time, I felt a bond, an instant connection. It was magical. You did good, Jess, I said, trying to break the ice and give her some credit too. She just nodded, looking away. I handed Alex back sooner than I wanted to, sensing the tension. In the weeks that followed, I visited as often as I could. I noticed that Jessica seemed increasingly irritable. Michael was back at work, and she was often alone with the baby. I thought she might need help. One day, I dropped by unannounced, bringing some homemade stew. I could hear Alex crying as I approached the door. Helen, what are you doing here? Jessica asked as soon as she opened the door. She didn't look pleased to see me. I brought some stew. Thought you might need a break from cooking, I said, holding up the pot as a peace offering. She sighed, rubbing her temples. Fine, come in. But keep it down. I just got Alex to sleep. As I walked in, I noticed the house was a bit of a mess, toys scattered, dishes piled up. It wasn't like Jessica to let things go like that. Why don't I take him for a walk? Get some fresh air, and you can have some time to yourself? I suggested, hoping to help. Jessica hesitated, then nodded reluctantly. Okay, but don't be long. And don't buy him anything. We don't need more stuff. I took Alex out in his stroller, feeling a mix of joy and sadness. Joy at being with my grandson, sadness at the strain with Jessica. Over the next few months, my visits became less frequent but more strained. Jessica started making excuses, saying Alex was napping or they had plans. Helen, you can't just drop in like this. We need our space, Jessica told me one day when I showed up with a new set of baby clothes. I know, but I'm his grandmother. I thought I'd be part of his life, I said, my voice cracking a bit. Being part of his life doesn't mean you get to decide when to show up, she retorted. I left those clothes on the porch and drove home with tears stinging my eyes. It felt like a door had been shut in my face. The few times I got to see Alex, I noticed he had these red patches on his skin. They looked itchy and uncomfortable. During one of my infrequent visits, while Jessica was making tea in the kitchen, I couldn't help but bring it up as I gently applied some lotion on Alex's arms. "Jessica, have you seen these rashes on his skin? They look sore," I said, trying to sound as casual as possible, not wanting to step on any toes. Jessica glanced over, barely missing a beat. "Yeah, it comes and goes. Probably just baby eczema or something. But have you thought about what might be causing it?" "Could be an allergy," I suggested, concerned but trying to tread lightly. She shrugged, stirring her tea. "We're using hypoallergenic everything, Helen. It's under control." I bit my lip, holding back. In my years as a nurse, I'd seen enough to know it might not be that simple. Maybe, but sometimes food can be the trigger. "Helen, I said it's under control," Jessica cut in, her voice firm, a clear sign to back off. I changed the subject, not wanting to cause a scene. But it sat with me wrong. Over the next couple of months, every time I visited or saw pictures on Michael's phone, I noticed the rashes were getting worse, not better. One day, I decided to call Michael directly. It was a hard step to take, going over Jessica's head, but I was worried. "Michael, have you had a chance to get Alex tested for allergies?" I asked as soon as he picked up the phone. "Mom, Jessica's handling it. She says it's normal baby stuff," Michael responded, his tone dismissive, mirroring Jessica's earlier words. "But what if it's not just baby stuff? Allergies can be serious, Michael. You know that." I pushed back, my voice tinged with urgency. "Mom, we're handling it. Don't worry," he insisted, his voice steady but a bit cold. Frustrated, I ended the call feeling helpless. It seemed like there was a wall between us now, one I couldn't get past. A few weeks later, during one of my limited visits, I brought it up again with Jessica, hoping she might have softened. "Jessica, his rashes are looking worse. Have you thought more about seeing an allergist? Just to rule things out," I ventured, watching her closely. She put down her coffee cup a little too hard on the table. "Helen, I told you, we've got it handled. Please stop questioning my parenting. Actually, I am a nurse, and I know some allergic diseases can turn very dangerous, even causing bronchial asthma in older age," I said, more firmly this time. She stood up abruptly, her face flushed with anger. "You know what, Helen? We know better how to raise our child. Just get out, Helen. Enough." Before I knew what was happening, she had opened the front door and was pointing outside. I stood there, stunned, my heart pounding in my chest. As I walked to my car, her words echoed in my head. It hurt, knowing I was being shut out, especially when I was just trying to help. I drove home with a heavy heart, worried about Alex and unsure of when I'd see him again. When Alex was just 3, Michael got a job promotion that required moving to another city. It was a great opportunity for him, but it twisted my gut, knowing how far they'd be. The thought of being so distant from Alex, especially as he was growing up, really did a number on me. We kept in touch through phone calls and video chats, but it wasn't the same. Watching Alex grow up through a screen felt like I was missing out on so much. Michael was always busy, always on the move, and Jessica, well, Jessica never did take to mothering like you'd hope. Years zipped by faster than I liked, and before I knew it, Alex was 11. That's when Michael's job brought them back to our hometown. I was overjoyed thinking I'd get to see them more, especially Alex. But things didn't change much. Michael buried himself in work, and Jessica lived up to the social butterfly act, shopping and gabbing with her friends more than she was home. Alex often ended up alone at home. When we talked, he'd tell me how he'd make his own dinner, usually just heating up some frozen pizza or burgers. It wasn't right for a kid to fend for himself like that. "Grandma, I don't like going to school," he confessed on one of our calls. "The other kids tease me about my weight." It broke my heart hearing this. You just tell them they should be so lucky to have you as a friend, I said, trying to cheer him up. But deep down, I knew words were just a small comfort. Then came the National Day of Grandparents at school. Alex invited me, his voice full of hope. Of course, I wouldn't miss it for the world. Watching him in class, participating and laughing, I was so proud but also saw the sadness he carried. He tried to hide it, but I knew. After the event, I drove him home, and he opened up more. Mom and Dad never come to these things. I always sit alone, he said, his voice just a whisper. I clenched the steering wheel tighter, feeling a mix of anger and sorrow. You're never alone, Alex. I'm here, I told him, but the reassurance felt hollow. That night, I called Michael. You need to spend more time with Alex. He's feeling left out, I said, my words blunt, stripped of any softness. Mom, we're really busy. And how we raise Alex is our business, Michael shot back, his tone dismissive. It is my business when my grandson is suffering, I countered, my voice rising. We're handling it, Mom. Don't make a mountain out of a molehill, he said before hanging up. I sat there, phone in hand, feeling helpless and shut out. They were back in town, but the emotional distance was as vast as ever. I couldn't just stand by and watch Alex struggle, but every attempt to help seemed to drive a wedge further between us. One evening, my phone rang, and seeing Alex's name flash across the screen made me smile, but the smile vanished the moment I heard his voice. Grandma, I can't breathe well, Alex gasped on the other end, his words squeezed out in a rush. My heart dropped. Alex, where are your mom and dad? They're not home. I ate a peanut butter sandwich. I feel weird. Stay on the phone with me, sweetheart. I'm calling 911 right now, and then I'm coming right over, I said, my voice trembling as I dialed emergency services with shaking hands. I gave them the address, my words quick and urgent. Please hurry, my grandson is having a severe allergic reaction. Hanging up, I grabbed my keys and practically ran to my car. The drive over was a blur, my mind racing with fear for Alex and anger that he was alone. I arrived just as the paramedics did. The front door was unlocked, so I rushed inside, finding Alex on the living room floor, his face swollen and his breathing labored. Oh, Alex, I cried out, kneeling beside him as the paramedics took over, administering an EpiPen. He's having an anaphylactic reaction, one paramedic said as they prepped him for transport. His words were a cold splash of reality, this was serious. I followed the ambulance to the hospital, my hands clenched so tight around the steering wheel they hurt. At the hospital, I was a nurse, but in that moment, I was just a scared grandmother. In the emergency room, as doctors worked on Alex, I called Michael. His phone rang several times before he picked up. Michael, Alex had a severe allergic reaction. We're at the hospital, I said, my voice strained but forceful. Okay, I'm really busy right now. I'll try to come by later. Michael's voice was distant, too calm. How can you be so calm? Your son could have died. He was alone. I couldn't hide the fury and fear in my voice. Mom, we're handling it, was all he said before he hung up. Handling it? I was floored by his indifference. My mind raced with anger and worry as I turned back to Alex, who was slowly stabilizing, thanks to the quick response of the medical team. Jessica didn't answer her phone at all. I texted her, no response. Then finally, a text came through. At the spa, can't talk. At the spa? I was stunned at how disconnected it was from the gravity of the situation. I was left to watch over Alex, to be there as he woke up, frightened and confused. After the emergency, neither Michael nor Jessica showed up at the hospital. The lack of concern they displayed was chilling. Knowing I needed to document everything, I called them, my phone's voice recorder quietly running. Michael, Jessica, Alex had a severe reaction. He could have suffocated, I said, keeping my voice steady despite the turmoil inside me. Michael's voice was dismissive over the phone. Mom, he's big enough to handle a little allergy. We're busy here. I felt a knot in my stomach. This wasn't just a little allergy, he could have died. He was alone and struggling to breathe. Jessica's laughter crackled through the phone, cold and sharp. Oh, Helen, stop being so dramatic. It must have been quite the sight, though. Her words stung, and I struggled to keep my composure. You think your child suffocating is funny? You're his parents. Look, Helen, you're always exaggerating things. Keep this up, and maybe we'll just stop letting you see Alex altogether. Jessica snapped back. I hung up the phone, my hands trembling. Shocked by their callousness and armed with the recording, I knew what I needed to do. The next morning, I contacted the Department of Child Protection Services and met with a representative. I handed over the recording and explained everything, from the ongoing neglect to the severe allergic reaction. Armed with their advice and the severity of the situation laid bare, I began gathering all the evidence I could. I requested medical reports from Alex's recent treatment and documented every detail of past neglect. I wasn't just a concerned grandmother, I was building a case to protect Alex. I also reached out to a lawyer specializing in family law. When we met, I showed her all the documents and played the recording. I need to know if I can get custody of my grandson. His parents aren't taking care of him, I said, my voice firm despite the fear. The lawyer listened intently, her expression growing more serious. This is a strong case for negligence. It's clear you can provide a stable and caring home. We'll need to file for emergency custody first, based on the incident, she advised. On the day of the court hearing, my nerves were on edge. Michael and Jessica were there, their faces set in hard lines. Before the judge, I laid out my concerns, bolstered by the evidence and the damning recording. They tried to dismiss the concerns, but their words felt hollow and rehearsed. Helen is overreacting. This is just another of her stunts, Jessica claimed coolly. The judge listened to both sides, then turned to me. Why do you believe Alex would be better off with you? Because I'm there when he needs someone. When he was scared and hurting, I was there. Not just as his grandmother, but as someone who genuinely cares for his well-being, I stated, my voice clear and strong. The judge made his decision. Given the circumstances and evidence presented, I'm granting temporary custody to Mrs. Helen Thompson, with a re-evaluation in 6 months. Life with Alex in my house settled into a comfortable rhythm that I never knew I needed. Every morning after he left for school, I headed to my part-time nursing job, grateful for the chance to keep busy yet still be there when school let out. Every afternoon, I picked him up, and we'd chat about our days on the drive home, a routine I cherished deeply. At home, I whipped up special meals that were peanut-free and low-calorie, mindful of both his allergies and his health. It wasn't long before Alex started losing weight and gaining confidence. He joined the school's track team, and not a day went by that he didn't surprise me with his newfound zest for life. The teasing he once faced at school faded away as he made more friends and became known for his sports achievements rather than his weight. I got involved with the parent association at his school, throwing myself into organizing events and fundraisers. It felt good to be part of a community that cared as much about the school's success and the children's welfare as I did. Meanwhile, life threw its curveballs. After the custody trial, Jessica spiraled out of control, her life marked by drinking and depraved behavior, which ultimately led to Michael divorcing her and moving out of state. He started a new life elsewhere and, regrettably, didn't keep in touch with Alex much after that. 6 months after the initial custody decision, we faced the court again for a review. The judge saw the positive changes in Alex's life and granted me permanent custody. Jessica showed up, her eyes hollow, her spirit seemingly broken. She tried to sway Alex with promises of expensive gifts, like a new phone if he chose to live with her. But Alex, standing taller than ever, politely refused. I want to stay with Grandma. She's my family, he told the court, his voice steady and sure. As we prepared for his upcoming birthday, Alex's excitement was palpable. We planned to travel with his school sports team to a competition in a neighboring state, a trip that would double as a birthday adventure. Think I can win this one, Grandma? He asked one evening as we reviewed the event schedule. With the way you've been training? They don't stand a chance, I replied, winking at him. His laughter filled the room, echoing off the walls and warming my heart. Alex was more than just a child I was raising, he was a light in my life, a reminder that sometimes, the hardest battles lead to the greatest victories. And as we looked forward to his birthday and the competition, I knew we were ready for whatever came next, together.